Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, thanks for stopping by to check out the video. We have something that's kind of special today. It's something that is very personal to me, and that is a handsaw that we're going to be trying to breathe some new life into. It belonged to my grandfather, was ultimately passed along to my dad, and then eventually found its way to me. It has been well used over the years. It's somewhere between 75 and 100 years old, and I'm going to be trying to restore this thing, make it look not new. It's not going to be new looking, but we're definitely going to make it look better than it looks today. So stick around and let's see how we get on with this. All right, here is what we're working with today. So I believe this is well, I know it's a Disston brand, and I believe it is a D23 and is a rip saw as opposed to a crosscut saw. Rip saw simply meaning a saw that can cut with the grain versus a crosscut which cuts across the grain. In any event, you can see what we have here. We're going to be taking some time at some point during this project to actually see if we can more accurately date this saw and actually confirm the model number D23 that I think it is. So we're going to be doing that, and there's actually a resource that I'll be referencing during the video as we get more into this. But the first thing we're going to do is start taking the handle off and get all the individual pieces separated and then go from there. So let's get going. Okay, first thing we are going to do is see if we can get these screws out of here. This could be easier said than done. Oh boy. Oh. Let's see here. Well, that one's going undone fairly easily. This screw looks like maybe it's been replaced somewhere along the way. But it's exactly, we are missing one screw. See how this one will do. Okay, that one's coming undone easy enough. And I have this one. Oh boy, that one was a little tough, but I believe we've got it. It's amazing how sturdy these saws. Oh, that is our, yeah, that's our badge, actually. And if you look at this, that's probably not showing up. We're going to shine that up, and we'll actually take a good close look at it once we get some of the rust off there, where we can actually examine the badge. The badge on these saws is partly how you date them and determine what model they are. I do have a spare screw that I'll be able to use, and it's vintage. It comes from an older saw, an older Disston saw, so it'll match perfectly. So anyway, let's see, get the handle off. There we go. I think you can see some of the buildup. Well, that's rust that was underneath the handle. It's actually not terribly bad in terms of rust. It does have some pitting, but we'll clean all that up. We'll let it soak in some evapor rust, and we'll take some steel wool, and we'll see what we can do to kind of shiny this thing up. The handle is, like I say, this saw has seen a lot of use over the last 75 years, or even more than that potentially. And so a lot of the features and the contours of this handle have really been worn down, like on the back end of this handle here. These usually come to, not to a point, but they're definitely worn down pretty considerably, both of those. Same thing with this end here. That usually has a fairly, again, I don't know how easy that is to pick up, but it's something that usually has a more sharper defined edge here and along each edge, but that's okay. I'm actually totally okay with that. I want to preserve that. What I want to do is just clean this handle up and protect it, try to make it look pretty again, or attractive. And but as far as the sort of the bruises and the worn areas, I definitely want to leave that all intact because it kind of tells a story. All right, let's get going. Let's start next on the handle and see what we can do to start to clean that up a bit. Okay, we are going to start off very gently here with have some 120 grit sandpaper, which is a bit rough, but certainly not as rough as this handle already is. The one thing I do want to make sure of is that I don't do anything to compromise the carved in design on this. So if you can see that, there's little carved in designs. They'll show up more when we get to the point where we start applying a new finish to this handle. So let's go ahead and I'm going to sand with the grain on this. One question that is outstanding on this is what kind of wood this is. Disston commonly used applewood for their handles. That was up until, I believe, the late 20s, early 30s, somewhere in that range. Not that they discontinued the use of applewood, but I think they started using some other woods as well, like walnut and some other hardwoods. Cherry, I think, was another wood that they've used on some of their saws. Even birch, from what I've read. And I'm thinking this is, I don't know my woods. We'll figure out what this is at some point here. Boy, this thing has definitely seen its hard knocks. Okay, I have a damp rag. Let's wipe this down. Okay, so in true Jim Handy channel fashion, we are going to improvise here. Somehow I have to get this saw blade into some sort of receptacle so that I can cover it with evapor rust to help get what bit of rust is on there off. So we'll see how this works. I have a trash bag, and I guess I need to see if this is going to fit. I know this is, and yes, I believe it will. So all I need to do is just get the saw blade in here and covered just ever so slightly. And I'm trying my best to not poke any holes in this bag. So I think that will work. Here goes nothing. So we're gonna pour the evapor rust in here before I get too crazy. Let's just make sure this isn't leaking. And I do not see any leaks. That's good. So let's just pour away. The idea is just, like I say, just to get it barely covered. And honestly, I could probably have just used steel wool to get most of that off, but I really want to do this the easy way. Now we also have the badge and the screws. So we're going to put those in there. I'm going to do one other step here, and that is to take some paper towels. I'm just going to roll out about 3 layers. I'm going to stuff that in there so that it's on top of the blade. And these paper towels will soak up some of that evapor rust and keep the top part of the blade. Let me pour in just a little bit more here. Okay. Now, so there we go. You can see I've got paper towels in there. The entire blade is saturated. My screws, my badge is all saturated. So we're just going to, I'll cinch this up just a little bit. And we're going to let that sit right there for probably a good 24 hours. And then we'll come back, take that out, and take some steel wool and take it from there. Okay, it is the next day, and we are ready to get our saw blade out of the bag here. It's been soaking in evapor rust overnight, so it's had a good probably 16 hours or so of soaking. So it should be enough based on the amount of rust that it had. So let's roll up the sleeves here. One good thing about evapor rust is it's not toxic. In fact, it's very eco-friendly, and you can reuse it. So all of this that is soaked into the paper towels, I'm just going to squeeze it back into the bag here. I'm actually going to try and recover what is inside this bag and put it back in the bottle. So we'll see how that goes. That may be easier said than done, but no big deal if we can't. All right, let's get our screws out first and our badge. So we have those pieces. Oh yeah, very nice. Okay, definitely has worked. We'll still need to take a little wire brush to all of the various parts in that come out of here, as well as the blade itself. All right. Comes the blade. Oh, yes. Wow. That's pretty darn amazing as to how clean that looks compared to when it went in. And we are going to do a little bit of sanding and buffing on this just to shine it up, but holy cow. This side looks like it's going to have a little bit more. Well, no, maybe not. But we're going to sand it. I guess we're still going to sand it. We want to get as smooth of a finish as we can here. So, but anyway, that's definitely, Evapor Rust is just amazing. If you've watched any other videos from other folks restoring things and had the task of removing rust, you've probably seen others use it, and there's a good reason why. It absolutely works. Okay, so there we go. That's our blade. We'll get rearranged here. I want to see if I can recover some of this Evapor Rust that's in the bag, and then we'll start the process of shining up this blade. All right, we're going to start with our saw blade here. I'm going to actually try just doing some hand sanding here, and I'm starting with 400 grit just to reduce the amount of scratching and that goes into it. I can go up from there if I need to. But let's give this a try and let's see. There is still a little bit of rust on here. I tell you, I'm going to get some WD-40 because I've seen that technique used as well to help cut what bit of rust might remain. I don't know if we'll be able to get all of this discoloration off of here. I'm not quite sure. It's not rust. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera or not. But it may just, we'll keep working at it, see what we can do. We'll see how the other side looks as well. Probably be similar, but we'll just keep at this and see where we end up. Okay, so we're making good progress. I started out with 400 grit, and that was partly just out of caution. I wasn't sure what it was going to take to really start to bring a decent finish back to this blade, but I ended up having to back up, and I ended up going all the way back to 60 grit and using an orbital sander, and that seems to have got me pretty much where I wanted to get to. Again, it's not going to be perfect, so I'm going to now work back up, and I'm going to go from 60 to 120, and then I'll finish it off with 400 grit. I may even try and put a polishing wheel on it just to see what will happen. But yeah, it's turning out pretty nice, actually. So let's keep going. All right, so we'll go from 60 to I'll get a fresh 120 grit. All right. All right, so I think we are at the point where we can say anything that we're going to do to the saw blade itself has been completed. I think I've got that looking pretty decent. It's not perfect, but again, we're talking a pretty old saw blade here. I did clean up the badge. Based on the handle and the badge, this is I think is in fact a D23, a Disston D23, and in all likelihood it was acquired just before World War II. I don't think it goes back quite as far as when these first came out back in the late 20s, but in any event, I think we've got it confirmed in terms of what it actually is as a model number. We've got all of the screws cleaned up. I think I'm going to use some linseed oil on the handle itself, and then after that has had plenty of time to soak in and do its thing, maybe put some wax on it, something of that nature. So, and then we'll assemble it and we'll call it done. So let's go ahead and finalize this thing. Okay, so here's where we're at. We are ready to apply some stain to the handle of this saw. Originally, I was going to use some boiled linseed oil, had all kind of other plans, and quite frankly, when I went to the store to look at this stuff and started adding up the cost, I just decided that, the whole point of starting out with this project was just to kind of revive this thing, restore it to some extent, and make it more presentable. I didn't really want to start sinking a lot of money into it. So I'm just going to use some basic stain. But the one thing that I've decided is after sanding this down, I really like the lighter color. Now, it was originally kind of a walnut stain. I'm guessing that this is either applewood or walnut, most likely. I'm not sure which. But in any event, I like the lighter kind of color to this. And I do like some of the patina that is still in here. So what I've opted to do is use a transparent stain and sealer. I just want to protect this and kind of keep it like it is. There is a color to this stain and sealer. It's called honey gold. And so I'm just going to apply that just to give this a nice coat of protection and to try and preserve this look here that we have since we've sanded it. And then once that is nice and dry, I'll probably come back with maybe some paste wax or something over that just to give it a little bit of sheen, and then we'll finish it up by attaching the handle back to the blade. So let's get started. Going to move our blade out of the way here. And I just have I'm not getting really fancy here. I just have a simple terry cloth rag. I have my stain and sealer. Just going to dab that in there and start rubbing that in. It's probably going to look darker at first, but as it soaks in, it starts to penetrate and actually dry. It's probably going to look a little bit lighter than it looks at the moment. The other thing too is I thought that this would do a better job of kind of enhancing this, I'm calling it a wheat straw sort of feature on the handle here that's been carved into it. That may not be what it's actually called, but that's what I'm calling it. So I do like that feature, and I think this will really help make that stand out better than it did before. So we'll just, and it may take a couple of coats of this. asking myself, what would my dad or my grandfather think, right? And in terms of just cleaning this up and improving the looks of it. And I think either one of them would approve. Again, this is probably not going to really get used anymore. I mean, it certainly could, and I'm actually going to sharpen it once it's all said and done, which I'm not going to feature in this video. There's a bunch of videos out there where they show how to sharpen these kind of saws. In fact, I'll put a link in the description in case you're interested and see how that works. But it's just a tedious process with a file, so I'm not going to cover that piece of it. But I will be giving it a good sharpening. There we go. So that's got our first coat of stain and sealer. And again, we have this area here, which I'm pretty sure somewhere along the way, it's either oil or some kind of petroleum based, but that's okay, right? It's all part of the history and the story that this thing has to tell. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. And I think we haven't really destroyed any of the authenticity. We've just really cleaned it up and kind of brightened it up a bit. So we'll let that dry and determine if probably put one more coat. And then once that's good and dry, we'll go ahead and get it reattached back to the blade. All right, we have reached the end of this project, and I think it has worked out pretty well. So this is the finished product. You can see the handle definitely is much nicer looking than it used to be. We've got a nice, clean, shiny blade. There was a bit of pitting and some other discoloration that I guess if I had continued to work with it, I could have gotten that off, but I just chose to get it to this point. I don't mind a little bit of that. Again, this saw has a bit of history to it from a family standpoint, and I wasn't interested in making it look like brand new, but it did turn out really nice. I'm really happy with the color and the finish of the handle in particular. And just to give you a sense of how I went about that, I initially was going to use some linseed oil, boiled linseed oil, and go that route, and then use some paste wax. I didn't have any. I went to the hardware store. Holy cow, that stuff is so expensive these days. And I just really didn't want to put a lot of money into it if I could avoid it. So I looked around my shop, and as far as some stain, I had this lying around. And it's Thompson's water seal. This is not the cheap water-based type. This is a much more resilient version. But it's a stain and sealer, and the color is honey gold. There was some overspray they got on the can, which is the reason why it looks that way. But we started with that on the handle. And, of course, that was after we had done a good sanding of it, obviously. And then once that dried, the next thing I did was apply some liquid gold. I figure if it's good enough for fine furniture, why wouldn't it be good enough for a saw blade handle? And sure enough, I think it turned out terrific. Again, you can see how it looks. So it's stained, it's sealed, it's well protected. It's got just the right amount of sheen on it. The wheat straw carvings definitely stand out much better than they did before. And some of the patina is actually still there, which I really appreciate that as well. And if you look at the badge and all those screws, all I did to clean those up was use a brass wire wheel and a drill. Literally this right here. So if you look at literally just chuck this up in my drill. The brass helps knock the dirt and the rust off without scratching it up too much, because the brass is softer than the steel that the screws are made out of. So that worked out well. And as far as the actual model number of this saw, that's still a little bit of a question. I do think it's a D20 series saw, But these saws would have had a marking on the blade itself, but that was long gone. So I don't have that to go by. The only thing I had to go by was the badge. And one of the things when I visited the Disston Institute .com website, this badge is kind of inferior in terms of its manufacture, and they show a lot of the different badges and how they look in contrast with one another. And I believe it dates it to probably the mid to late 40s is where I'm going to put this saw, and I'm going to say it's a D20 series. It may very well be a D23. Hard to tell. I'm just not sure, but no big deal. The last thing that I did with the blade, and of course you saw, I ran some hand sand, or I should say I hand sanded the blade, and then eventually I had to get an orbital sander out and start with 80 grit and then work up from there. And I finished with 400 grit to bring it to this condition. And then the last thing I did to protect the blade, to keep it from rusting any further, is good old WD-40. I put a really light coat on both sides, and that'll protect it, keep it from rusting. So there you go. I mean, it's an old saw, and it's got some character to it from being so old, but it's in really great shape. I will be sharpening it. I'm not going to cover that in this video. Again, there is a link in the description if you want to see what it takes to actually sharpen a hand saw. It's just a tedious process with a file, is basically all it boils down to. So that's it. Hope you liked the video. If you did, give me a like. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It costs you nothing. And you'll be notified if you ring the bell. You'll also be notified when I put new videos up online. So thanks again for sticking around, and we'll see you on the next video.